Welcome. Okay, so we're continuing with our exploration of what does it mean to have faith, and what does it mean to have faith taking action. What does it mean to, we talked about at the beginning of this, go back to the original learning that we did together. We talked about how what we're really looking to do is to develop our spiritual muscles to be able to preserve the innate sense of well-being that every person has. That's a divine gift that we have. That's the inner tranquility. So Emunah is called training. I don't have to train myself to develop a faith in something outside of myself. I already have that faith inside of myself, but I need to protect it because there's all kinds of things that come and challenge that. Some of those things are, so to speak, as a matter of course. So for example, we experience a disappointment. So how do we deal with a disappointment? We also may not get what we want when we want it, or things may not turn out the way we want to have it. How do we understand that? But then there's also people who are going around trying to spread their fears and their insecure thoughts to other people. So how do we make sure that we don't absorb their thinking that then creates turmoil within ourselves? And then bitachon is the certainty, the absolute certainty that God Almighty is taking care of us. So the two really work together. There's a natural sense of well-being, a natural sense and tranquility that each person has that we can access. And you can access that just by being alive, just by breathing. You're able to access that inner tranquility, that inner knowing, the inner sense, that inner insight, the inner place of inner peace, which is our awareness. That's our consciousness. Our soul is the one that's resonating with that, because that's God Almighty is giving us life. And then there's also the related bitachon. Bitachon is, it's absolutely for sure. Betach in Hebrew means absolutely for sure. Absolutely. In fact, you're going to translate, so you say to someone, will you be there at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning? Betach, absolutely. It's not even questionable. There's absolute certainty that, and this is the root of the word, the use of the word for bitachon, the concept that God absolutely, I know he's taking care of me. He will take care of me. He's taking care of me now. And everything that he's doing, has been doing, is doing, will be doing, is always in my best interest all the time. So that's an absolute certainty. So we want to continue to develop that awareness in ourselves. Now, we're learning the Beis Halevi, his exposition on the concept of bitachon, on developing this certainty. And we are over here. I'll pull this up a bit larger. Follow along. Now, last week we discussed the concepts of making a living. That really we learned that our livelihood is provided for us. We're going to discuss that more. He's going to go into additional detail to explain, well, one second, do we have to make any effort to make a living? What kind of effort is required? So forth. A lot of fascinating insights we're going to gain on that. But we first have to understand that our provisions are taken care of. God is going to provide for us. He's going to provide everything that we need. And also he said that last week we discussed that if a person tries too hard, he can make things worse. So we learned an example of where King Solomon had got the sense that, and had sort of perceived the angel of death was kind of unhappily wandering around his palace. And he said, what are you doing? Why are you so upset? He said, well, because there's these advisors that you have that he's been given instructions to take those people from this world, and they're protected. They're here in King Solomon's palace. So King Solomon got concerned, and he decided he wanted to protect these people, and he sent them to a place called Luz, which was known to be beyond the reach of the angel of death. And lo and behold, these two men ended up perishing, because when they, in their process of getting to the Luz, this region or town, that's when the angel of death got them. So he, so to speak, created his worst nightmare by trying to so hard, whereas they were already had the protection they needed within his palace. He didn't have to send them anywhere. So it's a fascinating example that brought by the Beis Levi to show us the Gemara of how a person can end off trying too hard and making things worse. But now he's going to turn, in this week's learning, he's going to turn to the healing and health. And he's pointing out over here that when a person is experiencing a lack of health, a lot of people automatically think that they need to run to a doctor because they feel like, well, they don't know how to figure it out. They don't know what the answer is, and someone else must have the answers. But he's saying this in continuation of the previous paragraph where he was saying the person could try too hard, and so to speak, the strain and the struggle of trying to get what they want will end up with greater difficulties. And so he says also this is in the matters of healing. We see that, and constantly, literally constantly, we can see that doctors can make mistakes as to what is ailing the person. They can come to the wrong conclusions. It's not only that a doctor, God forbid, could not fix through his activities, but on the contrary, he can make things worse. So how could a person possibly rely on his efforts after he realizes, or since he knows that he knows nothing of whether it's for his benefit or not? Doesn't know whether the outcome is going to be. He doesn't know if the doctor really knows what he's talking about. He doesn't know. So he's making all these efforts, but he doesn't really know if it's in his benefit. And it's an even greater, so to speak, busha means embarrassment or bashfulness, that 3 times a day we say, Mechalkel Chaim, we declare in the prayers, Mechalkel Chaim b'chesed. He sustains, referring to God Almighty, he sustains life with loving kindness. Seimech neiflim, v'reifech chaylim. He supports those that have fallen, and he heals the sick. V'lo nikva zeh b'libay ad shegiya liyadoi eze pratim shachech shakol. So this doesn't really get established in our hearts. And the next thing we know, some detail, it comes up in life, and we forget everything that we just said, that God is the one he's the one who's providing us all our income. He's taking care of everything that we need. And he is supporting us in our down times. And he's healing the unwell. So a person all of a sudden gets something that shakes them up, a detail happens, and things are not exactly the way they expected them. So for example, it could be a financial matter. He's not sure if he's going to have enough money this month because a client didn't pay or this detail didn't work out. And all of a sudden now he's running to make even greater effort. He loses sight. He just prayed 3 times a day that God Almighty is taking care of him. Yet when it comes to a practical bump in the road, all of a sudden he's like, okay, I got to do more, because he's losing sight of where the income is coming from. He's losing sight of where the healing is coming from. And this is tragic, because it's already included in what it says in the book of Isaiah, and we're going to pull that up now. In verse 13, prophet Isaiah says, right? And the Lord, I'll read the whole verse over here. And the Lord said, because this people has come near, with their mouth and with their lips they honor me, but their heart they draw far away from me, and their fear of me has become a command of people which has been taught. So there's actually a lot in this here. The Beis Halevi is only quoting a few words from this, but let's understand what this verse is saying. The part that he's quoting is over here. With their mouths and with their lips they honor me, but their hearts are far from me. Meaning to say, we're already making a good step if we are saying that God is the provider of all income and he's the provider of all health. But the question is, has that really been absorbed? Has that really settled in our hearts that we actually go through the day feeling that way, right? If a person's saying it, but at the same time, they're not experiencing with a sense of feeling of certainty, then but this is what God Almighty is complaining about over here in verse 13, that they're with our mouth and their lips, we're honoring him, but our hearts are drawn far from God. Now, obviously, there could be a situation where people are doing this intentionally, but here are what we're referring to is we're talking about a situation where a person has no bad intentions. He's not intentionally honoring God just for the sake of honoring God, and he's not just praying because he's when he says those things, he's going through the words, he's saying the words, but when it comes down to actually being put on the front lines, when things have to come into action, so that's why we're calling this learning together Emunah, faith in action. Then all of a sudden, that the words that were said about God all of a sudden go out the window. And now it's like, well, where do I find a solution for this in the natural world? So that's now I got to dig harder. I got to look harder for the income. I've got to go and look for a healing solution that is maybe not necessary, maybe not going to be helpful because I'm being driven by the insecurity, the insecure thought. So remember that we said there's only two types of thoughts that we could have. We could have a secure thought or an insecure thought. So when we're saying God is the provider of everything and he is the healer of all and he helps those that have fallen or stumbling, then we're having a secure thought. We come into the world and we have an experience. All of a sudden our hearts drop. The fear sets in. The despair sets in. The despondency sets in. Where are those coming from? Those coming from insecure thoughts. Because the insecure thought is, God doesn't have this under control. I got to take back the steering wheel. Yes, I will, in moments of clarity, I'm going to declare God is the one who's taking care of me and take care of my income and take care of my health and take care of everything. But now, and let him drive the bus. Some bumps in the road, oh, excuse me, let me hold on to the steering wheel. I don't have that practical faith in action or that certainty in action. Because we're talking about this is the certainty, the knowing certainty that God Almighty is going to take care of me every moment gets shaken up when I take an insecure thought seriously. So I could be speaking lofty thoughts. I could be studying the Torah. I could be reading all these verses about God's declaration of how he's going to take care of people, how he is taking care of people. I can look and see examples of the world of that care. I could see in my own life that care. But when there's a bump in the road, all of a sudden, I could be now in fear. I could be in a place of despair. Things are not looking so good. I don't see how this is going to turn around. These are all the thoughts that go through our heads. So what happened? Where did God go all of a sudden? He didn't go anywhere. But what changed, what shifted was the thoughts I'm giving priority to. When I'm in a good mood and I'm in prayer and I'm not thinking about all the negative things or all the bumps in the road, smooth sailing, secure thought. Now I close the prayer book. Now I come to the quote unquote real world. And now I have, oh, that situation is not the way I want it to be. boom, comes crashing down. That insecure thought then comes crashing down. The heart crashes down. It's interesting that the verse says, the heart is far from me. Because the heart is where we could tell, where our thoughts are. When our thoughts are in a godly place, then our heart is light. Our heart is lifted up. In fact, Yisrael's Roglov, that Yaakov's feet were lifted when his heart was full of, when his heart was buoyed, when he had the thought that God is taken care of, and his heart was buoyed, then even his feet were lifted up. Our whole bodies become lifted up. But if my heart is down, either it's in so down or constricted. Fear is contraction, right? Heaviness is the downness. That's the opposite of the lightheartedness in a positive way. I don't mean frivolity. I mean lightheartedness, feeling lighthearted, positive, and expansive. When I'm feeling lighthearted and expansive, I'm able to be there for other people. I'm able to expand. I'm able to share my gifts. I'm able to, the singing comes naturally, the positive, see things in a positive way, see myself in a positive way, see others in a positive way. When the insecure thoughts becomes taken seriously, then all of a sudden that, in an instant, then my heart is distant from God. What does mean my heart is distant from God? It's that my heart is not reflecting the godliness. My heart is now reflecting the taking seriously an insecure thought. And now it's heavy. And when my heart is heavy, my body becomes heavy. Now I have to struggle to do the things that I just said 5 minutes ago. Oh, I'm so energetic. I could do all these things. You know, I have unlimited, boundless energy. I could do anything. No insecure. I didn't have an insecure thought. That's why I was having secure thoughts. God is my power. God is my strength. God is my source. There's no limit to that. That's an infinite experience. Comes along an insecure thought and saying, well, that's not, something's not going the way it should be. I'm not happy with that result. Boom, that insecure thought. Is everything going to be okay? Those insecure thoughts, boom, comes down the heavy heart. Now, can't even move my limbs. I don't want to pick up the pen and do anything. Even the thing that I'm having an insecure thought about, I don't even want to do anything about it because I've come to a place of despair. So the heart is far from God Almighty. Why is the heart far from God? The heart is far because the thinking is no longer thinking the godly thoughts. The thinking is now experiencing a disconnect. And therefore the heart is now far. And we're not even talking about doing anything incorrect yet or doing anything improper. That could be a consequence over time of that heaviness and the despair and the despondency and the fear. Then a person's the heart contracts, the heart gets heavy. Then there's an absence of life-giving energy. There's absence of life-giving actions and life-sharing actions and life-increasing actions. And everything comes down. And then, but if that stays long enough, then the result is inaction. Then there's looking for other things in the world to try to relieve the feeling of heaviness, trying to relieve the feeling, the pain that comes from that contraction, comes from that fear, comes from that heaviness of the insecure feeling. And then we start to get, now we see things start unraveling and things start getting worse. So where did that all originate from? It all originated from the insecure thought, taking it seriously. There'll always be insecure thoughts coming through our head, but when we take it seriously, that's when we have this experience in our heart. So the Beis Halevi is saying, oh no, I was going to say the rest of the verse. This is an expression of it, but their fear of me is just, they're doing it out of habit. Mitzvah anashim, it's like a command that people have habituated themselves to. This is in the last part of this verse over here. So a person it's going through the motions, meaning to say, it's actually it's reflecting on what I was just saying, because in this contracted heart experience, the heart is far from God, contracted heart, and the heart is down and despairing and heavy. So person is not running out to do a sin, God forbid, at that moment. But that fear that's keeping him in line, so to speak, to not do any transgression is just because of habit. Could be just because of habit, because he's like, he's not really feeling the inspired connection, but he's now not going to do anything wrong just out of a habitual training. So it's interesting, if you continue the next verse, it says, therefore I will continue to perform obscurity to this people, obscurity upon obscurity, greater concealment, and the wisdom of his wise men shall be lost, and the understanding of his geniuses shall be hidden. Meaning to say that then the mind is unclear. When the heart is dragging a person down, you can't think clearly anymore, and everything starts spiraling downwards. And then the person starts to think they could hide from God, that God doesn't really see them anymore, and God doesn't see their actions. And that's where a person now starts to go off track in their actions. But where did it all start? It all started up here when the words that we're saying, and when we're honoring God, that our heart is not really there, because our thinking is not lined up with it. So the Beis Halevi is coming. Oh, sorry. Back to Beis Halevi over here. He's saying this is included when we drop everything, all our belief, and then we now think, okay, now this is a really, really serious situation. Yeah, I said that God's taking care of everything. God's going to provide all my income. God's going to heal everybody. God's going to running the world. He's taking care of it. There's going to be good income and outcome. Everything's going to be good. And then all of a sudden, it's like, boom, that all flies out the window, so to speak. And now it's like, oh my gosh, this is really serious. I got to spring into action. I got to do all these different things because I got to take care of it. I got to make all this effort. And then God is forgotten. Then this is what the prophet is referring to, that in their mouths, in their lips, they were honoring me, but in their hearts are really far from me. So this is not directly addressing the question of, well, as like I said before, about income, how much effort should you make? I mean, do you get up in the morning and you go to work, and do you try to make a product and sell a product or a service? And we're going to see, he's going to discuss that, how much work we're supposed to do. But what he's addressing over here is to realize that the real blessing, the real abundance from God is not coming from our effort. That's not where the blessing is coming from. Our health is not coming from our efforts to be healthy. Our health is coming from God, who is, like we said over here, He is the healer of those that are ill and unwell. So this is what he's pointing out to us, to get ourselves back on track. And he's saying it's really an embarrassment for us, because here we are with all these lofty thoughts, all these lofty ideas, and then when it comes to shove, we're like, we've lost it. I just, an analogy came to my mind, and I haven't. Every analogy you have to be careful, because you never know if it fits well. But it's like, imagine, we're all standing by the lineup for the bus. Bus is coming, and we are all standing there, and some people are getting anxious. It's gonna be space on the bus. There's a 52-seater bus coming, take people to work, and there's 250 people waiting for the bus. So one guy is like, oh, don't worry, there's plenty of buses, there's plenty of seats, there's gonna be room for everybody, right? But when the bus comes and he's standing, let's say, 75 people back, 75th in line, and he's like, but then all of a sudden he sees that people are like rushing to the door, and there's a crowd around the door. All of a sudden, all his his good words just fly out the door. And you see this guy, he's like jumping to the front and he's pushing past people. And he's like, this is the last bus that's coming and he's got to get on. And we've all seen those kind of situations. Or, you know, the kids, when the ice cream comes or they put out the treats, you know, it's like the kids are all jumping for it like it's the last treat. There's not enough. No matter what, they're pushing everyone out of the way. That's what, so we can speak the good talk. We can really mean it. But then we see, how does it come into action? And in action, when that insecure thought goes, uh-oh, I'm not gonna be able to get onto this bus if I don't fight my way onto, I don't do my effort to get onto this bus. I gotta fight onto that bus. I gotta fight to get that food. I gotta push other people out of the way. That's coming from insecure thought. And that's where person's now, his heart is not really with God Almighty because it's really distant from God Almighty. Now he's not following all the things that are true. Now he's just putting an effort, raw effort, to try to get the result. And that's what the source of the problem is. The source of the problem is when we're putting in raw effort, we're disconnected from God Almighty. And it could be in you know, in a, let's say, a healing situation. Person's God, he's under the weather, and he's going to be okay. A minute ago he was praying that God is the healer of all. Now he's not. He's sneezing, and he's like, okay, I'm going to conquer this. I'm going to get my vitamins. I'm going to take my vitamins. Take vitamins in the morning and vitamin that, and he's got this whole thing up. But what happened? He lost sight of God in the picture. Now he's doing his effort. He's going to take care of this issue, and he is now putting in what the base later here is calling hishtadlus. He's putting his hishtadlus. His effort is superseding any place for God in this experience. And so we'll conclude here. But this is something we could really. It's really a sobering. And what I encourage everyone to do is to watch this again and really think about this. How in my life and experience do I do these things where I say things on one level, but when it comes to really, really facing the challenge, even the small detail, Eza pratma pratim, even one little detail from all the details, that is going to sound like, oh, that's going to run, you know, forget everything, and then run solely after my efforts. Questions?
I need to let this sink in.
That's a great answer. That's a great question and answer. You can always ask questions next time based on what we did last. You know, I don't mind if you want to bring up a question at the beginning of next time.
I'm good for now, Rabbi.
Okay, great. Any other questions? Okay. We'll look forward to seeing everyone next week. In the meantime, have a beautiful week.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Okay.
Have a good week.
You too,
Take
Max.
care.
All right.
Bye.